Good evening, everybody. Our top stories: Paul Ryan affirming his political ambiguity and displaying his indefensible servile support of the establishment whose boots he loves to lick. The lame duck speaker today chose to side with the deep state and defy reason and decency as he did so, lining up with the obsequious Trey Gowdy, saying there's no evidence of a spy in the Trump campaign, and later playing toady to the open border globalist, and he chose to pour syrup on his own words to signal he will deliver for his masters on K Street, Wall Street, and multinationals to assure open borders and amnesty for illegal immigrants.
I feel good about the kind of conversations we're having. Our members are earnest and sincere in trying to understand each other's perspectives. We have a big swath of views within our conference on this issue, and I really do believe that there's a sweet spot here.
A sweet spot here. Well, how long will Republicans put up with this lame duck who seems intent on destroying the party's chances in the midterms? How long will the party put up with him? I'll ask Congressman Matt Gaetz if he's had enough of the Ryan Rhinos. And the dean himself, Ed Rollins, joins us tonight. Shocking new details of FBI corruption and deep state depravity. Leaked details of the coming Inspector General's report describe fired FBI Director James Comey as an out-of-control insubordinate. Hell-bent on getting his own way, the IG report only the first installment in revealing all that is rotten in the Justice Department and the FBI. The lying and leaking fired Deputy Director Andrew McCabe now begging for immunity before he will testify on Capitol Hill. The question: will Senator Grassley's Judiciary Committee protect the corrupt or serve the people? Senator Cornyn is saying the right things.
We really need to get to the bottom of what happened at the FBI during the Comey years, where apparently there was misconduct going on, which I think has really impugned the reputation of the finest law enforcement agency in the world, and we need to clear the air. And so I think giving Mr. McCabe cover through immunity would be a mistake.
Clear the air and clear the corruption. President Trump today called out the ignorant and the vile national left-wing media in particular for their vicious attacks on the First Lady as she was recovering from her surgery. Fake news and the nasty little cretins who make it up. Our top story tonight: Paul Ryan sold out a long time ago, and he's made it clear who owns him throughout his speakership. The lame duck isn't much of anything but a rhino and a servant of lobbyists, globalists, and the establishment. Today, Ryan undercutting the president and changing the subject from the Republican Party's strong primary performance to his own disloyalty. In less than 6 minutes at today's House leadership briefing, Rhino Ryan somehow managed to defend the feckless Trey Gowdy, deny all of the evidence supporting Spygate, and attempt to subvert President Trump, and chart a legislative course toward disaster through amnesty for illegal immigrants that could well destroy the GOP in the midterms. Here he is.
I think Chairman Gowdy's initial assessment is accurate. But we have some more digging to do.
Mr. Speaker, do you believe that the president has the power to pardon himself?
I don't know the technical answer to that question, but I think obviously the answer is he shouldn't, and no one is above the law. When we fix DACA, we want to fix it permanently so we don't have another DACA problem down the road. And so we're having productive conversations. We plan on having a conference-wide conversation for 2 or 3 hours tomorrow. And that's what we should be doing, is talking out among ourselves so the majority can function.
Think about that, a whole 2 or 3 hours devoted to DACA. Speaker Ryan's outrageous conduct at the twilight of his indistinguished congressional career can only be understood as a craven effort to even further ingratiate himself to the establishment forces of the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Roundtable, the Koch brothers, and Wall Street. Cuban-born never-Trumper billionaire Mike Fernandez is threatening to withhold all funding from Republicans who won't back the DACA discharge petition. He's even assembled a cabal of other open borders mega donors to join him. You can see their names on your screen there, including former Exelon Chairman John Rowe, WeatherTech CEO David McNeil, Dr. Zachariah of the University of Miami Health System, and Coastal Construction CEO Tom Murphy Jr., Century Home Builders Group CEO Sergio Pino, and Carnival Cruise Line's former CEO Bob Dickinson, Enrique Sosa, formerly of Dow Chemical Company. They're just a few of the big money donors who own Ryan and the rhinos who would destroy the GOP. Well, joining us tonight, Republican Congressman from Florida and member of the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman, good to have you with us. You have put out a very strong statement, and I just want to read the first line. It is shameful to see House GOP leadership emphasize support for FBI, DOJ intelligence collection on the Trump campaign. That's about as straightforward as you can put it. I've got to just ask, why in the world are you putting up, not you, but your conference putting up, with a man who could do what he did today at that leadership briefing, which is change the subject from the success of the party in the primaries, the biggest primary night in this election cycle, and turn it to himself and turn it against the very idea that evidence matters in his judgment of whether or not there was a spy. It obviously doesn't in his case.
Lou, I've come on your show before and defended Paul Ryan when I've agreed with him, but there is no defense today for Paul Ryan siding with the FBI and Department of Justice against those of us in the Congress who are working for transparency and accountability. Devin Nunes, for example, has been asking for a year for the documents that go to the very heart of this Trump-Russia hoax. As we sit here today, Lou, have not seen the documents that show why this investigation even began. But here's what we know. That Australian diplomat, Mr. Downer, he lied. He said this information came through the Australian ambassador to the United States and that's how it got to the FBI, and we found out that isn't true. So one liar gave information to Peter Strzok, who's already had to be demoted because he's like the head of the Never Trump movement over at the deep state, and there is no way any criminal prosecution could ever be brought against this president based on the bias and the mishandling of evidence. But instead of our speaker standing with us and putting the focus on the FBI's refusal to turn over documents so that we could perform our oversight duties, instead he was defending the FBI. And that's deeply frustrating to me, and we need the speaker to be an institutionalist for the Congress, not to be a defender of the deep state.
And he is that. And he is a defender of K Street and Wall Street and the Koch brothers. The man has sold out. He's been obviously sold out for years. And we just wanted to check the record. And let me ask you, can you think of a time that the speaker has been compelled to say there's no evidence of collusion whatsoever, despite financing a one-year investigation by the FBI, almost a year, and more than a year of the general counsel? I can't remember a single time that he has stood up and defended the president and said there is no evidence whatsoever of collusion, and that deeply troubles me.
The House Intelligence Committee stood up and said that there was no evidence of collusion. We need the speaker to do the same. Another area, Lou, is to have real accountability when it comes to the crimes of the Clinton family and the Clinton Foundation. We have the majority leader, the majority whip, Mr. Gowdy even, Mr. Goodlatte, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, all calling for a second special counsel, and the silence from our very own speaker is deafening. Speaker Ryan needs to step up. He needs to join us in a call for a second special counsel, and for goodness sakes, stop defending the FBI's collection of intelligence on the Trump campaign when they refuse to give us the documents to show whether or not they broke the law. We already know the FBI and Department of Justice broke their own procedures. Bruce Orr broke procedures when he didn't disclose that his wife had a moonlighting job for the people at Fusion GPS trying to take down Trump. We know that Rod Rosenstein violated the Woods procedures before the FISA court when he didn't disclose that Christopher Steele had been terminated by the FBI for lying, and yet they were asking a court to continue to rely on his statements. So time and again, we need stronger leadership from our speaker, supporting the work of those of us who are fighting in the trenches to get real answers for the American people.
Let me ask you, Congressman, why in the world would your conference not say that's enough? Mr. Lame Duck Speaker, get the hell out of the office. You're going to send us to perdition and to destruction in the midterm elections. This man doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a strategy. He doesn't raise money that any other speaker couldn't raise. He certainly is not a strategic thinker. He is anti-Trump. He has been so throughout. He is a disaster, and the disaster is going to consume your party. Do you not agree if he is left in that speakership?
Well, Lou, you know I run in the more conservative circles of the House, and I have never, up until this point, heard a single person talk about removing Speaker Ryan from the speakership. Today, for the first time, I was hearing colleagues say, well, you know, if Speaker Ryan won't stand with us in this fight over the essentials of our democracy, not weaponizing an intelligence community against a presidential campaign, you know, do we need to look at other choices? And so I think that remains a lingering question, and you're starting to see more frustrations bubble to the top because we need that leadership.
Congressman Matt Gaetz, great to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lou.
Up next, President Trump firing back at the fake news media who think, well, it's just fine to take aggressive, cheap shots at the First Lady as she convalesces from surgery. That's about as appalling as the left-wing national media could ever get. No, it's exceeded itself before. We'll take that up and much more with the Dean himself, Ed Rollins. And oh yes, we'll also be talking about a very good night for the Republican Party in the primary polls. Right after this. Stay with us. The Republican Party in the primary polls. Right after this. Stay with us. First Lady as she convalesces from surgery. That's about as appalling as the left-wing national media could ever get. No, it's exceeded itself before. We'll take that up and much more with the Dean himself, Ed Rollins. And oh yes, we'll also be talking about a very good night for the Republican Party in the primary polls. Right after this. Stay with us. First Lady as she convalesces from surgery. That's about as appalling as the left-wing national media could ever get. No, it's exceeded itself before. We'll take that up and much more with the Dean himself, Ed Rollins. And oh yes, we'll also be talking about a very good night for the Republican Party in the primary polls. Right after this. Stay with us. President Trump has had to put up with a lot in his 16 months in office. Today, he slammed the national left-wing media's vile attacks on his wife, the First Lady, Melania Trump. And today, he tweeted this: "The fake news media has been so unfair and vicious to my wife and our great First Lady, Melania. During her recovery from surgery, they reported everything from her near death to facelift to left the White House and me for New York to Virginia to abuse. All fake. She's doing really well." 4 reporters spotted Melania in the White House last week, walking merrily along to a meeting. They never reported their sighting because it would have hurt the sick narrative that she was living in a different part of the world, was really ill or whatever. Fake news is really bad. This early afternoon, the First Lady made her first public appearance at a FEMA briefing. The hurricane season was the subject, and here is the president.
She went through a little rough patch, but she's doing great, and we're very proud of her. She's done a fantastic job as First Lady. The people love you. People of our country love you. So thank you, honey.
Extraordinary. Joining us tonight, Ed Rollins, former Reagan White House political director, Great America PAC chairman. You've seen, as they say, a few things.
I have.
To see Melania Trump, the First Lady of this country, attacked as she has been by various elements in the national left-wing media. These are the lowest life cretins in the entire low-life national left-wing media.
By far, anyone that has surgery, it takes weeks to recover. She had a minor surgery, but she was in the hospital for a week. If she wants to sit in bed for a month, that's her prerogative. And I think at the end of the day, I agree with the president. It's outrageous, all the rumors and the insinuations that they
Where the hell are people, though, other than the president?
Well, they need to be
other than the party saying, you know, you creeps, stop what you're doing. Stop it.
People ought to start canceling the newspapers if they still have a newspaper, and I think to a certain extent start switching channels and start really putting pressure on these people. The First Lady has served this country very well and very effectively, And I think at the end of the day, the president did the right thing today.
She speaks 5 languages.
She's magnificent.
She's
magnificent.
intelligent. She's so classy and filled with grace. I mean, good Lord, what are they doing?
Well, they're doing everything they can to throw rocks at them, and they can't succeed. And again, she looked magnificent today, and welcome back to the game, which she's fully engaged in. So.
Well, it is great to see her healthy and recovering.
She looks fabulous.
And as we turn to the primaries last night, the biggest primary of this year. Your thoughts on what the Republicans demonstrated and what the president demonstrated?
Well, the president demonstrated that he still has power. He took a nobody in California, person who had moved to California after running unsuccessfully 4 times. He endorsed him in the California gubernatorial primary, in which most people did not.
Referring to John Cox.
John Cox, and got him in the race, beating the former mayor, former speaker for the 2nd spot. And I think to a certain extent, the other example was Congresswoman Roby, who criticized him. Who's now basically forced in a runoff in Alabama. He still has his juice out there.
Couldn't get 50% of the vote.
And will have to fight to the bitter end to get reelected. May not. I think what the story of yesterday is the Democrats got what they wanted in California. They got candidates to go in, star incumbents in our open seats. It's a real battle. And the issue of Ryan is you need someone who can lead this back, and he can't do it. So my premise is, if I was a member of Congress, which obviously I'm not.
So Ryan. It comes out on this day. It had to be intentional. It had to be absolutely premeditated to change the subject, to attack the president, and this self-righteous nonsense, this crap. I'm going to just call it what it is, where he says the president shouldn't do that. The president has said he's not going to do it because he hasn't done anything wrong. Does Ryan listen to anything but his own bleating voice?
And he's got a sycophant staff around him, I'm sure, who basically say, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker. I think it's very important for us to have an ex-speaker at this point in time. As I was saying to you earlier, what the audience.
So what in the world should they do? I mean,
any member can stand up on the floor, and they had to tell them tomorrow in the conference motion to vacate the chair. Anybody has a right to do that. That's how they drove Ryan out, the threat of that. And I think to a certain extent, then you have a vote. It's a mandatory vote, 218.
You said Ryan, you meant Boehner.
I meant Boehner, yeah.
Right.
And Boehner, who is, I mixed them up today because they're
very much alike.
They're very much alike.
Hand-picked. You would think they'd be almost synonymous.
And I think at this point in time, Republicans have to understand. I tell you, it's 50 years of experience. They are in a war like I've never seen. They can hold this Congress. They can expand a little bit, but only if they have leadership and they have someone out there who can lead them.
And they affix themselves to President Trump and his agenda.
Absolutely.
This is the reason they did as well as they did yesterday. Right. It is the reason they can win and expand the number of seats rather than lose them, which is the historical imperative for the party in power in midterm elections. They can reverse that.
And every single Senate candidate, including Rosendale, who got nominated yesterday, and who are running these key Senate races, are all basically pledging to support the president. And I think we're going to pick up a couple seats in the Senate, but we certainly can lose the House if we don't have strong leadership and wrap themselves around President Trump.
What do you think the odds are of motion to vacate? Will we hear that in the next week? I can't understand why any Republican wouldn't insist on removing this.
It's the idea that you can spend 3 hours tomorrow discussing anything other than Goodlet's bill, and to let the Democrats have any say on the floor.
He's setting up amnesty.
Well, he is, and and that he'll lose control of it, and then we'll be stuck with something that the president have to veto, and he will veto it, and it won't be good for the country.
Well, he says he'll veto it, and this is going to be a direct challenge. These idiots on K Street who are playing this game are playing with the country's future. They don't give a damn about the American worker, the American people, the American family, our middle class, and Ryan is owned by them.
It's the most affluent part of the country right now. It doesn't relate mainstream.
All right. Ed Rollins.
Thank you.
Great idea. Thanks for being here.
It's there. It's sitting there. Been there since Thomas Jefferson.
Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you think any Republican who refuses to support the Trump agenda should be voted the hell out of office in the midterm elections? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. Up next, shocking new developments involving national security violations, political cover-up, and the IT scandal linked to Congress and Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, then the head of the Democratic National Committee. We'll take that up with the Daily Caller's Luke Rosiak about a possible plea deal. Really? Stay with us. We'll be right back. Set to strike a plea deal, apparently, with federal prosecutors. That's right, a plea deal. A hearing has been set for July 3rd following 7 delays in that case over the past 6 months alone. Awan and his wife face conspiracy and bank fraud charges, transferring money from the Congressional Federal Credit Union to Pakistan before trying to flee the country. And joining me now is one of the reporters who has been at the forefront of this story, reporting from the outset. Daily Caller investigative report. Luke Rosiak joins us here tonight. Luke, great to see you. And again, terrific reporting. This case is one of the most frustrating things to witness because it's inexplicable. The delays, the peculiar posture that's been assumed by the prosecutors and the defendants in this case, and the role of the former DNC head, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
Well, here's how you explain it, Lou. This is about rigging the 2016 election. There was a second hack that occurred the same week that the DNC was breached. The same week that WikiLeaks started putting up those DNC emails, the House of Representatives Inspector General briefed authorities that there was this ongoing hack by Pakistanis who the Democrats has hired as IT guys. And ordinarily they would have been arrested on the bat, obviously. But think about it, that Russian narrative that they just decided to start pitching that very week, you know how tenuous it is, how backed by nothing it is. You throw into the mix arrests of Pakistanis hired by Democrats and unvetted for a similar hack at the identical time. The narrative about Russia would have been impossible to secure. And as you know, that's all they care about is the narrative.
Yeah.
So
and what's interesting in this, amongst the many things that are interesting, fascinating, intriguing, and frustrating, is where is the Justice Department now? Why in the world aren't we hearing about this from Jeff Sessions? Why aren't we hearing about it from a Republican-led Justice Department? And where in the world is Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and how has she been given immunity? Is Awan somehow, has he been in some way co-opted by forces that are dark and sinister in the deep state? What is going on?
What it is that the handling of this case disproves the entire Russian narrative. Democrats don't care about hacking. They don't care about foreign meddling. What they did in this case is decide to knowingly allow the United States government to be hacked by Pakistanis for 6 months until right after the election so that they could peddle a phony Russian narrative. We know that they would go to any lengths to smear Donald Trump with this Russian narrative, but this is worse than we ever could have imagined. What the Democrats did here is treason. They allowed the United States to continuously be hacked by these bad guys so that they could spin this Russian narrative, because you couldn't have it both ways. If they arrested these guys, it's all over the media, and say bye-bye to any Russian narrative. At that point, it just becomes ridiculous for the Democrats. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 10 times, shame on the Democrats for being completely negligent with their IT getting hacked again and again due to their extreme negligence. This is by unvetted Muslims who came over through chain migration. This would have been the October surprise that would have ensured a victory by Donald Trump, and the House of Representatives withheld that knowledge from voters and
Debbie
put
Wasserman
the
Schultz
nation at risk in the process.
And Debbie Wasserman Schultz, at the forefront of it all, as the person who also made it possible because she was in charge for the Russians, quote unquote, to hack the DNC servers and somehow convince the FBI that they should not bother the DNC with a little matter of national security, like having their servers hacked. Everyone, by the way, when you heard Luke say that they were unvetted, not a of the 44 House Democrats who hired these Pakistani IT aides, not a one of them conducted background checks on the folks who were basically running a ghost employee scheme. And we're going to be following it, and I would like, Luke, very much if you would join us here to tell us what's going on with this case. A plea deal. Are they trying once again, being this government and this administration now in charge of the Justice Department, surely they would not be a party to concealing and putting this thing so deep that it wouldn't see the light of day.
No, they are. The DOJ under Jeff Sessions is covering up a scandal that exposes the entire Russian narrative as a hoax. It is within Jeff Sessions' power to demolish this Russian narrative once and for all, charge the Pakistanis with hacking Congress, and exposing Democrats' hypocrisy and negligence. He has a list of witnesses, and his FBI is refusing to interview them. We've got the FBI refusing to accept evidence from witnesses. The evidence in this, they talk about, is it bank fraud, is it this or that? They have all the goods. It's in the server logs. This case is open and shut, and Jeff Sessions is refusing to bring the charges.
Luke Rosiak, thanks for your reporting. Thanks for being with us tonight and shedding more light on this. And come back soon, please.
Thank you.
Luke Rosiak, Daily Caller. Up next, volcanic blast leaving a trail of destruction in Hawaii and Guatemala. We'll have the report for you straight ahead. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Daily Caller. Up next, volcanic blast leaving a trail of destruction in Hawaii and Guatemala. We'll have the report for you straight ahead. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
To bring the charges.
Luke Rosiak, thanks for your reporting. Thanks for being with us tonight and shedding more light on this. And come back soon, please.
Thank you.
Luke Rosiak, Daily Caller. Up next, volcanic blast leaving a trail of destruction in Hawaii and Guatemala. We'll have the report for you straight ahead. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Correspondent Jeff Paul on the Big Island of Hawaii with our report.
The number of injuries here on the Big Island now rising from 1 to 7, either lava or respiratory related. But behind us, that is what authorities are worried most about. It is the most active fissure here on the Big Island, a river of lava now heading towards the coast where it has destroyed a coastal subdivision. These pictures really tell the story of how fast the lava is moving. The first is from Sunday as lava approached the coast. But then 2 days later, yesterday, the lava has now totally covered the bay, literally changing the shape of the coastline. At one point, there were 117 homes destroyed, but in about a day's time, that number has tripled to hundreds more.
It's like a flood, it's just pouring out, covering everything in its path. Just incredible what it's doing. It looked like there's no stopping it.
Geologists say 4,900 acres here on the Big Island is covered by lava. So far, no reported deaths. Lou?
Jeff, thank you very much. Jeff Paul reporting from Hawaii. Well, in Guatemala, the death toll after the Fuego volcano eruption has risen to 75. Nearly 200 people are missing. 200. 7 communities near the volcano have been evacuated. Rescuers completing the arduous task of searching through the ash, the rubble, for people who are missing, and they expect the death toll to rise significantly. The European Union announcing it will impose tariffs on nearly $3.5 billion of U.S. goods beginning in July. Mexico and Canada have already issued similar counter warnings against the U.S. and putting tariffs on aluminum and steel. President Trump considering separate trade deals with Mexico and Canada instead of renegotiating NAFTA at all after the 3 countries reached an impasse. The European Union and Canada to attend Friday's G7 summit. President Trump will be there as well in Quebec. It should be quite an interesting discussion. Joining me now, Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel. Great to have you with us. Ronna, good to see you. I'm going to start with first what we're witnessing today. Speaker Ryan single-handedly changed the discussion from the success of the Republicans in the primaries to his rather, I think, idiotic and really absolutely irresponsible remarks about both the president and about DACA and the general political atmosphere in this country. What is his problem?
Well, I will tell you, I just went on a West Coast swing, and I was in Washington State and Oregon and California, not, red states, and every person I met with said, we need more Republicans to support this president, and we want to see our Republican leadership supporting this president. And there are a lot of things to be concerned about with the informant that was in the spy that was in the Trump campaign. Right. And I'm going to use the word spy because I think by diluting the language, you are changing the severity of what happened. Because if somebody's in a campaign and they are reporting back to the FBI, they are spying. And why didn't they inform the candidate? Why didn't they go to Donald Trump? I think there are very serious questions, and our voters, our Republican base, wants to see Republican leadership stepping up and asking about why this happened. And we've got to talk about our successes, and we've got to be unified, and we've got to be supporting our president, whose agenda is making people's lives better across this country. And I see it and I feel it every single day as I travel around to state to state to state.
I think that, frankly, first of all, let me applaud what you've said, because I think you're being direct, forthright, and that is, I commend you for it. It is not often that we have that kind of language originating with the chair of either national committee, and I just want to cheer you, if I may, one more time. Turning to these elections yesterday, the president, those candidates he supported to a person, all did well.
They did. I mean, John Cox made it to the finish line, to the top two in California yesterday because of the president's endorsement. That is huge for our House members in California who are going to be in competitive races that the Democrats have targeted to flip the majority. To have somebody at the top of the ticket running for governor is going to bring out Republican voters, and that is because the president engaged. And across the state yesterday, we saw Republicans turning out in droves in 6 of the 7 battleground House seats yesterday that Democrats were counting on to flip the House. More Republicans turned out than Democrats, and the 7th one was just by a little bit that the Democrats turned out. That blue wave yesterday became a ripple, and I'll tell you why. Because the Trump agenda is working across this country, unemployment at record low, people are feeling better, wages are up, and they want to see this comeback continue, and they're not going to hand this nation over to the obstruct and resist Democrat Party of no.
Yeah, well, and that's, I think, being kind to that party, because right now they have no agenda. They have, frankly, little to commend their party for anything. I mean, Nancy Pelosi is talking taxes. Bill Clinton is talking history, personal history that he, I'm sure, would prefer to forget. And Hillary Clinton is still walking around in front of cameras and microphones asking what happened. It seems to me that the Republican Party should encourage them to continue on, certainly through the midterms.
Yeah, I hope that Bill Clinton's book tour goes through the midterms. We'd like Hillary out there as much as possible. Pelosi, I send her flowers every week. We want her right where she is because, their vision for this country is one of our country going backwards. They want to raise taxes. They want to hurt average working Americans. And when you look at what has happened with the tax cuts, with the deregulation, with wages up, with record unemployment, people are doing better because of President Trump. And you know what? That's going to resonate in November when people go to vote, because they're going to say the Republican Party is fighting for me. They're actually getting things done. We're about results. The Democrats are about rhetoric.
There's his language throughout the campaign of 2016 was memorable. But when he said he's going to be the president of all Americans, he meant it. And when we look at these unemployment numbers for minorities, whether African American, Hispanic, this is an extraordinary moment in time because they're at all-time lows. And this is a president who is delivering on every promise, and every one of those folks in the House where they want desperately to keep their majority, I can't even imagine why there would be any hesitation other than the fact that they are rhinos rather than Republicans affix themselves to the Trump agenda. Ronna McDaniel, you're terrific. Great to talk with you as always. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Lou.
You betcha. Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you think any Republican who refuses to support the Trump agenda should just be voted out of office in the midterms? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Up next, new revelations on FBI corruption. We'll have the update for you and the latest developments involving James Comey and Andrew McCabe. And be sure to join me on Tucker Carlson tonight, where we take up the Dems and the Rhinos' efforts to, well, provide amnesty and an open border for just about the entire world, at least the proximate world. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Proximate world. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We'll have the update for you and the latest developments involving James Comey and Andrew McCabe. And be sure to join me on Tucker Carlson tonight, where we take up the Dems and the Rhinos' efforts to, well, provide amnesty and an open border for just about the entire world, at least the proximate world. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Dow Jones Industrials back above 25,000 as a matter of fact. The Dow gaining almost 350 points on the day. The S&P up 24. The Nasdaq gained 51. Volume on the big board, 3.6 billion shares. And the U.S. trade deficit falling to a 7-month low in April. Exports rising to a record high. Airlines poised to raise ticket costs and add fuel surcharges to combat rising oil prices. But wait, they're not rising anymore. They're standing at least right now at $75 a barrel. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. The Department of Justice Inspector General's report put oil prices. But wait, they're not rising anymore. They're standing at least right now at $75 a barrel. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. The Department of Justice Inspector General's report putting low in April. Exports rising to a record high. Airlines poised to raise ticket costs and add fuel surcharges to combat rising oil prices. But wait, they're not rising anymore. They're standing at least right now at $75 a barrel. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. The Department of Justice Inspector General's report putting low in April. Exports rising to a record high. Airlines poised to raise ticket costs and add fuel surcharges to combat rising oil prices. But wait, they're not rising anymore. They're standing at least right now at $75 a barrel. A reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. The Department of Justice Inspector General's report putting